The year is 1964 and this is the sleepy south coast resort of Farmington. The story so far goes something like this. The elderly quack GP Dr Wade has been found murdered. The sole witness, Sid Plummet, has disappeared. Sid's best friend and former double agent Rose Bean has discovered that his house has been firebombed. And if that's not enough for you, there's a dodgy local MP who's trying to close the railways. All this takes place in a 400 square foot model, which when it's finished will have everything you're likely to find in the real world. The only difference is on our model, everything will work. Great news! Sid has escaped the firebombing of his house unscathed and has arranged to meet Rose Bean in the fishing village of Gobsmouth in a pub called the Smuggler's Elbow. Let's have a look at where that is. I'm standing here by the scrapyard and just over there where Brian's working by the bridge is Rose's cottage. If we go round the coast, there is the fishing village of Gobsmouth, and in that fishing village is the pub, the Smuggler's Elbow. And here it is. Brian's made that for us. And it's a rather cracking piece of work. Needs a couple of finishing touches, but it's almost there. Earlier on in the series, we showed you how to build Rose Cottage, which was made entirely out of card. Now this is made of something completely different, isn't it, Brian?
Yeah, it's a fairly heavy moulded plastic sheet.
Now why have you decided to use that material?
Because to replicate that kind of stone, you need something that gives the impression of the thing having depth.
It really does. It does look like a really solid building. And this is the sheet of it here. This is the stuff we're going to make the walls out of. And here's another piece. This is moulded to look like the slate work for the roof. Now, whether you're making it out of card or you're going to make it out of plastic, the first thing you're going to do is to draw a plan of your building. Now, I'm going to make a little outhouse for the pub. I've drawn it out, and the first thing I'm going to do is transfer that plan onto my material, which in this case is the plastic. And this is our front wall with a door and a window. Next thing I've got to do is to cut it out. So with an ordinary pair of scissors, I'm just going to try cutting this. Right, well I've cut out my section. Now the first thing you notice, how do we get the windows and the door out? Very easy. I've drawn a little window on a scrap piece to show you how I did it. There's your window there, and you drill 4 holes near the corners. I'll show you how to do it. Put it there, you just get a little drill, pop it in there. Just going to drill through there, and you end up with 4 holes. Then taking a pair of side cutters like these, all I'm going to do is snip through there, like that. Let's snip through that one. Snip through that one. It's a bit tough, it doesn't matter. Snip through this chappy, and snip through the top one there. And that should pop out. Now with a scalpel, all I'm going to do is tidy up these edges, and with a file, just smooth it up. So you end up with something that looks like that. Now that's our wall. One of the most important things when you're building something like this is to get these edges nice and flush. And in Rose's cottage we did it by putting a 45-degree mitered chamfered joint on it. But with plastic it's a little bit more tricky, and I'll show you how you do it with a scrap piece I've got here. Again, with a scalpel, all I'm going to do is just make a few cuts down here so I can roughly cut off 45 degrees. Once you've done that, onto the sandpaper, a little bit of a rub down, and there it is. There's a 45 degrees. And then it's just a case of sticking it together. The thing I always do is try and work with a set square, because it makes sure you've got everything at nice tight right angles. And all I'm going to do is take some polystyrene glue, and you want to put on a reasonable amount of this stuff. Once that's done, you just pop him in there, and you see the way the 45 degrees come together and form a perfect join. And now I know that's going to be square, and then if I turn it round, there you go, a nice tight square corner. There you go, that's the walls done. I'm sure you notice that the doorway is halfway up the wall. The reason for that is because I was going to make a little set of steps like this to get up there, and all I've done is use some scrap from the stonework to do that. So now we're going to put the roof on, and it's going to have a very similar roof to this affair, which looks quite tricky, but it isn't, and I'll show you how to do it. Again, I'm using a little bit of blue tack just to hold the thing in place while I work. Just makes the things a little bit easier, gives you another set of hands really. There you go, putting the first section on there. There we go. There we go, that's the roof on. Very simple job. Now, this bit here, there's a whole university programme or pure maths devoted to that little section. It can be very hard to work out, or you can do it the sneaky way. Sneaky way, bit of paint on here. All I'm going to do is just to paint a little bit of water-based acrylic paint on here. And I'll just pop it on there. There we are, take it away, and you're left with the imprint of the roof. You need to cut that out, transfer it to there, and you're in business. So while I'm cracking on with this, why don't we go and have a look at somebody else's railway? The Worley Model Railway Club is one of the best known in the country. Every year they organise the Model Railway exhibition at the NEC in Birmingham. They model in a variety of different scales and eras, and even countries. But what we come to see today is something quintessentially English. You might just be able to make out, over there, far twittering, an oyster perch. The layout is based on the illustrations and drawings of Roland Emmett. For those of you not familiar with his work, Emmett was most famous for his cartoons in the satirical magazine Punch. Also a man with a highly inventive and abstract approach to engineering. If you've ever seen Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, the car was Emmett's creation. Peter, you're largely responsible for this creation, and it is absolutely magnificent. But where do you start? I mean, where do we kick off? There's so much to look at, so much to see.
Well, we could start with this area here. This is a beach scene that shows a lot of characters made by one of our members.
And we've got the bloke with the little hat on there, with his hanky tied on his head.
And Punch and Judy show.
He's quite mad, isn't he, Mr. Punch? I'll tell you what's interesting. Sea is very hard to model. I've looked at lots of different models, lots of ways of doing it. This is one of the best seas I've ever seen.
Well, that's kind, thank you. It's just done with modelling clay, paint, effects and varnish.
So how do you make the bridge?
The bridge is on a wooden base with modelling clay, individually carved out to show the stones and then painted.
So every single stone is individually carved out?
Individually marked out and then individually painted. Now the bridge is pure Emmett. If you look at one of the cartoons, that bridge is in there.
So let's talk about the locomotive. There's not one I've ever seen before, I don't think.
Now, Hero's one of a kind. Hero's called an 020, which means it's only got centre driving wheels. It's got no wheels at the front or the rear of the loco, and it couldn't possibly work in real life.
I happen to notice you've got a teapot on the top of that as part of the steam mechanism.
That's one of Emmett's creations. Yes, he used to do things like that.
Moving down a carriage, who have we got here then? Who's living in there?
Well, that's the sleeper train, so we've got one or two of the passengers there being read a story to get them to sleep.
And the bloke next door looks like he's sleepwalking. And the lad at the end, he looks fast asleep. And I like his hair. He looks like the bloke out of Hellraiser, doesn't he, with all the spikes coming over. But he looks blissfully happy there. Well, moving around to here, this is one of my favourite little bits. This is the signal box.
It was made by one of our members who helped to create this, Lawrence, who unfortunately died. But having made that at the end of his modelling career, that's probably the thing he was most proud of.
It is a fantastic look. You've got the clock on the wall there, you've got the stove and the crazy stovepipe out there. And then there's Nobby outside there with his, what's that, a telescope?
It is, yes. He's just looking to see if there are any trains running at all.
I love this. Look at all this. This is the real McCoy, isn't it?
That is real slate. It looks. You can't really do anything that looks as good as the real material.
So moving along here, what have we got? What is this chap?
Yes, that's the fire engine. That's not an Emmett creation. That's one of mine. But I'm sure Emmett would have appreciated that.
And what's the little gizmo at the end then?
Little gizmo at the end. That's a sort of holding tank that would do for supplying the water.
Yeah, looks like a still to me.
Well,
looks like a mobile brewery tacked onto the back.
Maybe they've got different uses for it.
What are these two lads doing here? This brings us down to, what's this little station here?
These are the men from the ministry, yes, with their notepads, and they're keeping an eye on the running of the line.
Well, you say that, but one of the lads is playing noughts and crosses.
Well, he's a bit bored, isn't he?
Well, the other lad's hard at it, but this chappy here, he's gone off, hasn't he? He's just playing noughts and crosses.
Typical, it didn't need two of them, but they've sent two anyway.
Of course they have, yeah. I just noticed this.
The log bridge, yes.
The log bridge.
That's a traditional Emmett feature.
So we come round here, first thing you noticed, far twittering station.
Far twittering, of course, is the name of the layout, so we had to have a far twittering station.
Fair play. And then here we come round to the vernacular railway.
Vernacular, yes.
Yeah, that's a bit of engineering, isn't it? So talk me about this.
Well,
then.
that is an Emmett one again. You'll find in these illustrations, this is taken directly from an Emmett drawing.
Going down the other side there, we got Dozy Beach Station. Well, that's very interesting. What's going on down there then?
Dozy Beach again is an Emmett name, and that's the the entrance to the funicular railway.
Now that is a double-ended fairly, isn't it?
That's a double fairly, yes.
But what's going on with the drivers?
Well, it's a double-ended locomotive, so you have to have two conjoined drivers to operate it.
Now what's in the station?
That's the dining car.
Talk me through the dining car then.
Well, it's a mobile service. They seem to be able to cater for all sorts. They've got a tea urn on the top on the roof, and they've got food being served.
And then you've got, this is the water tower, I presumably the water. Next station, fumbling next to the groin.
That's true. The groins, yes.
And it's, and look at that, it's all held up, again, that's all held up with branches and stuff. And what's happened here?
That's the old line that disappeared into the marsh.
And clearly taking one of the engines
The whole
with it.
train disappeared.
The whole train went?
All the people lost. Tragic.
So when you put this on at a show, this must draw a huge crowd. There's so much to see.
A lot of attention. People love this. A lot of people, of course, know about the history of Emmett's drawings and his cartoons, and they come and they can see this in real life.
So you never get hate mail?
Not so far.
Right, there you go. And then what's this thing? What's this chappy here then?
Yes, that's the early morning milk train. So, milking on the move.
Milking on the move. I mean, the old cow, he doesn't look very happy though, does he? He's got this sort of glazed expression on his face. Being milked, on the move, doesn't like that at all. Oh, what a fantastic layout. I mean, so much to see. And it proves that one of the most important things is imagination.
Well, I'm glad you've enjoyed it, and we thoroughly enjoyed making it, and we love presenting it to the public.
I think it must get a huge amount of appeal to all sorts of people who come in and watch it. I'll tell you what I just noticed, out of order.
None of them work.
None of them?
Not a single one.
Brilliant. So here we are then, this is the finished thing. This is the Smuggler's Elbow. This is the first building to go into our quiet fishing village of Gobsmouth. As you can see, Brian's added some finishing touches, these signs. Now, don't worry about the signs because we'll be dealing with those later on in the series. In a quiet corner of the snug, over a pint of Farmer's Best, Sid whispers to Rose the name of the other person in Dr. Wade's car on the night of the murder. Rose cannot believe her ears, but knowing that Sid trusts no one, agrees not to go to the police. Now, that's not the course of action I would have taken, but then again, I was never a secret agent. Well, for very long. Our 400 square foot model of the mythical South Coast resort of Farmerton is going to need more than its fair share of trees. Fortunately, a chap called Roy Hickman has agreed to help me out in this department, but first it was up to the loft for a little nose around. This is fantastic. Believe it or not, all this started after Roy took an interest in his son's model railway. Well, the kids grew up and left home, you know what they're like, but Roy kept on modelling. And almost all of his building materials are things that most people just throw away. This is quite extraordinary. Roy, what are we looking at here? What is this? Is a 00 gauge.
Yeah, it's double O gauge layout. I'm not into railways at all.
So the railways wasn't really your thing?
No, I couldn't tell you the front end of an engine to the rear end. I keep telling people at exhibitions on this one, but they just laugh. And I just built the layout as a means of enjoying something that moved, so that as I progressed through with the scenic side, then it would be something which is going to please me. I wasn't worried about pleasing other people.
So this is one of the first projects you did, was this?
Yeah, I made up 6 of these, and you imagine that in doing that you've got all of these are individual sections, so you got multiplied by the 6.
And
you had to make 18.
This is all card, is it?
Yeah, the whole lot is all ordinary cardboard, and this in effect was, say, one of the first I made, and it's just ordinary paper covering on the roofs and also on the side walls, etc. What got me going initially was, I'm having made 6 of these, I put them into a close, and then I put the lights underneath, and at night time when I closed everything down and turned the lights out and brought the lights on in the houses, the shadows
the lighting
across, and it just made it look so real that I was hooked, because I was asked to go and do demonstrations at shows, and I felt that I needed to be in a position to show people what could be done out of nothing, because all of my modelling was basically trying to do it out of nothing. I'd start off with just a piece of card, and by the time I got through a 2-day show, there'd be trees on it, there'd be a little shed, be some flowers, a pond and things like that.
This is what I've come here to make, trees. And here's just a small selection from Roy's very own Arboretum. Now this is a twig. This is just.
This is just an ordinary twig. It's an ordinary small shrub in my garden called hebe, and you can see from that that's just a little bit.
I mean, it's already tree shape, isn't it?
That's right. To put the leaf on, I find the most effective, the most refined item to use is a coarse grade wire wool. This is then teased out, and then all you're going to do is stick it on. Your hot glue gun, and use a wiping action. You won't get so much of the entrails of the glue, and then you just put these into it.
Tease it into it.
Tease it in.
Look at that, and there's sort of tree
and
shape,
that should look like a tree in winter.
Some here which are, you use sort of combination of wire.
Right. If there was a tree on the layout that was going to be subjected to being moved around, then I would use what I call the twisted wire method, which in effect all I've got here is a bit of 6mm earth wire. By putting them in at right angles and pushing down with your finger and up with your thumb, and you just putting it, so you're twisting each one, getting a nice close twist. At this point, you can then cut your end half your strand, place that into the crutch there, and again push
and
down
twist
and
them
up,
together,
and you're exactly the same
You've got
again.
another branch.
Yep. So here, what we have done though, you'll notice that we've soldered where the joins were.
To get a bark-like finish, Roy knocks up a mixture of household filler, water, PVA and poster paint. The next job is to spray the tree with watered-down PVA. Then, grate some furniture foam that has been soaked in paint and left to dry. And with any luck, it should look like a tree in full leaf.
So while I'm waiting for my tree to dry off, we're going to have a look at Roy's current diorama. So Roy, what have we modelled here?
This is just a part of a modelling village in actual fact. Because I demonstrate at various shows, I like to take a different diorama each year.
I'll be putting the tree I made into our model a little bit later on. The next thing we're going to talk about is points, and points need signals, and signals need a signal box, which gives me a great excuse to show you this, a rather unusual signal box here at Sheffield Park on the Bluebell Railway, which, as you know, is where we're building our layout. Come and have a look at this. Now there'll be a lot of things that are familiar to you in here, if you know anything about signal boxes at all. Here are the levers, there's some dial-y things, and there's the bell. Now, what I want to show you is a particularly interesting thing, is this chap here. Fantastic bit of kit. This is a Walker train describer. And what it does, it's a way of communicating from the loco sheds to the signalman what's coming out of the loco shed. So in this case, we've got a pilot engine and it's headed up to Halstead Keynes. It's clockwork and it's one of the only existing ones left in the country. Moving down here, you've got the bell. Now this is one of the most important things on the entire signal box. The bells are a system of communication worked out between all the signal boxes so that everyone knows what's happening. And basically they use a sort of form of Morse code. So you've got one ring might be hello, two rings is come up and get your tea. But it's more complicated than that because it actually signals what train's going where, who's going where and how many carriages and all the rest of it. Moving on from the bell is this bit of kit. This is a single line token machine and it's crucial for the safety of this kind of railway. It works like this. A train can't travel on the line unless the driver is carrying one of these. It's called a token. Now this machine is connected to an identical machine in the next signal box. As soon as a token is removed from either of these machines, the whole system locks down and you can't take another one of these out. Now what that means is that at any one time there's only one token, so therefore there's only one train at the track at any time. Now I know it sounds complicated, but it's actually very, very simple and pretty much foolproof. Alright Brian, you know a lot more about points than I do. I've never really understood them. Can you explain to me, a simple way, how does it all work?
Well, what you're going to remember about a point like this one, or any points really, is the fact that there are two parts to it. This part is what's called the switches.
Right.
If you move that across, you can see that now a train will go that way.
It's going to turn him off to the left.
And if you move it across that way, then the train's going to go that way.
So what's this little inside rail chappy here do?
Well, that's called a check rail. It actually makes sure that the train is actually going the right way.
Now on our layout, we're actually going to mechanise our points. We're going to have them remotely controlled from over there, which is where our little control centre is. And we're going to do that using this chappy here. It's called a point motor. What it basically is a pair of, well, solenoids, aren't they? A pair of electromagnets. Now, what these do is they live underneath the track just there, and when you hit it, it flips over and it pushes the tie bar, which pushes the switches. Now, the tricky bit, of course, is getting this in the right place. And there's a very simple way of doing it, and I'm going to show you how. The first thing you're going to do is to make a hole in the very first sleeper here, which is what I've done already. So you pin it down at one end. And what you're going to do is to set the tie bar so that the switches are almost dead centre. And with your pin vise, all you're going to do is to pop it through that little hole and make a little mark onto the board below. What I'm going to do now is spin the point round, and what you'll see is a little drill hole we've just made. Now what you want to do is to take a drill with a 6mm drill bit and you're just going to drill straight through, pop it out, and now you've got a hole, 6mm hole that goes right through the baseboard, through which you pop this point motor through the baseboard underneath, through the tie bar. So what you've got to do then is to make sure that the switches are in the very centre of the track again, like you had them before. So they're in the centre, and then you get the point motor, so that's in the centre. It's just a question of screwing it all down, and there you go. Nip him off, and it's set. And this is the tree I made with Roy Hickman, and I'm very pleased with this for my first attempt. And it's going to live up here next to our archaeological dig, just there. Now, I haven't mentioned our archaeological dig before, but before I do, we're just going to check our point motors work. So Brian, if you'd be so kind, can you just flick the point motors and send the train round, please? Well, that all seems to be working very well. That's lovely, lovely, lovely. But it's going to take a while to trundle round, and while it does, it gives me the opportunity of explaining what's going on over here. Work on the road has ground to a halt because of the discovery of a rare Roman coin. Coincidentally, a very similar coin has disappeared from the local museum. No connection, I'm sure. Wait a minute, hang on, let's have a look. Who's that? Hello. That's a bit dodgy. That is the lovely Liz. She is the neglected wife of the dodgy MP, Anthony Schooner. And she's about to go into the caravan of handsome archaeologist Ben Kelly. Now, I wonder what they're up to. Perhaps she's got a sudden interest in history, or perhaps she's looking at his trowels or dusting down his... Look at that, here comes a train.